everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So expectations, it's a funny old thing, isn't it? Because, sometimes you have those movies where you have such high expectations that almost no matter how good the movie is, it still struggles to even reach the, the lower tiers of those expectations that you may have on that movie. On the other hand, we have those cases where the expectations on a movie are so low that it almost automatically, reaches it and exceeds it just by not being so bad as you expected it to be. Now, there is no secret that I'm not a huge fan of horror movies, and especially not supernatural horror movies, and especially not supernatural horror movies produced by Blumhouse. They have done some of the worst things in the name of horror that I've ever seen. And this movie garnered a very, very bad reputation very early on, considering that, the reviews I didn't read, but I sort of read the, headlines, that this was one of the worst supernatural horror movies that had ever been released. So I went into this with absolutely zero expectations. And for parts of this movie, I do agree with that criticism. But on the other hand, this movie was far, far better than I suspected it was going to be. Let's find out why, and let's find out if you are going to like this movie. This is Fantasy Island. Fantasy Island takes place on this island where you have the ability to live out your ultimate fantasies. So we have a bunch of people who has come there. I don't know if they, paid for this or won this on a contest or something like that. They include, Maggie Q, who never had a family. We have a bunch of fist-bumping bros, a guy who wishes he was in the military, and we have, a girl who was bullied in high school. And they're met there by Rourke, played by Michael Pena, who, explains a little bit about, the rules that they have to apply here, because they have to see their fantasies run its course towards the end. And sometimes your fantasies may not take the course that you expect them to do. Unexpected things might happen because your subconscious will affect, how your fantasy will proceed, and you have to go with the flow, essentially. So they get to the elevator, bullied girl gets to, take some revenge on, her tormentor from high school and stuff like that. But the thing is this actually real, or is it just holograms and, archives from your memory that they're taking and, manipulates you to think that this is real, or is it actually happening for realsies? In that case, why? And why are people sometimes, having black goo come out of their noses? What's up with that? And why is Michael Rooker running around with a machete and he looks like he hasn't slept for about 7 years? What is exactly going on here? Is there some kind of a, darker machination at work here, and will they be able to actually leave the Fantasy Island once their fantasies are over? That's what we're gonna find out. So it is a tried and tested formula for a good horror movie. I like the concept of this movie. It feels like almost like a Twilight Zone episode, and the scenario is way more interesting than the execution of, said scenario, because the acting in this movie is atrociously bad. Michael Pena, Rooker, and Maggie Q aside, they are okay, but compared to the other ones, they're basically Robert De Niro and Meryl Streep in comparison, because holy heckins are they horrible. Bullied girl and the bully from high school, they are absolutely atrocious, and those fist bumping dudes, they were so fucking annoying. I mean, not Biodome annoying or anything like that, but still quite annoying. So bad acting and some bad writing, and they think they are a little bit more clever than they actually are. But I thought the movie looked pretty good, and there were some interesting, cinematography, and the setup was really great. But as I said, if this movie could have been better written, better directed, and casted by something else than these nitwits, it maybe could have been a really good movie. But here's the thing. The longer this movie went, the more interested I actually became, because this movie was not so much of a horror movie as it was a psychological thriller, and the setup is actually quite interesting, because this movie is, as you can probably imagine, free from, you know, spirits and demons and possessions and stuff like that I absolutely hate from other Blumhouse pictures and other horror movies of this type. So the movie isn't good. I'm gonna say that straight away. The movie isn't good, but it had enough interesting things to keep me thinking maybe they can salvage this somehow, because it's all about the ending. Because almost every movie that I will ever see in the horror genre for the past 25 years always has this modern supernatural horror movie ending that I absolutely hate, that is pointless and stupid, and I always give it a 10-point reduction every time I see it. But this movie didn't have that, and because Blumhouse have served me up a never-ending cavalcade of absolutely atrociously awful movies, all coming with this horribly boring, predictable ending. And when they didn't do that in this movie, it felt like, you know, this abused wife is saying to her, you know, friends that, oh, my husband didn't beat me up this week, so he's a very nice husband and he loves me. Because, you know, I've been beaten up so many times by Blumhouse that somehow that made this movie a lot better than it had any right to be. It's still not good, but considering how low my expectations were, it was, you know, far above it. And if you were going into this movie with somewhat good expectations, you will probably think that this movie is the absolute drizzling shits. But now I think it is an underwhelming, flawed, but ultimately quite decent horror thriller movie with some interesting psychological elements to it that is severely botched, not only by, you know, its casting and acting and writing, but also the rating of this movie, considering the PG-13 rating hampers this movie a lot. If it at least could have been, you know, a trashy, glorious mess of tits, blood and, you know, harsh language, I would have been all up for that. But in this case, you really feel like this one should have been an hard R, that it could have explored more of the fantastic elements and the gloriously creative setups that they could have done, but no, they cannot do because of the PG-13 rating. So, should you see this movie? If you love horror movies, you will probably see a lot of things in this movie that you will absolutely love. The thing is that if you hate horror movies, you will probably see this movie and think that it was okay. And you will probably say something like, well, it was better than I expected it to be. And I will say this, I didn't expect them to pull out the big twist that they do towards the end, where they said basically, haha, you didn't see this one coming, did you? And I was like, ooh, I didn't see that one coming. But that was really stupid. And to be fair to this movie, because they had an ending who was not brilliant, but at least made some form of sense and actually tied up most loose ends that this movie had, at least, you know, it wasn't a bad ending, because a bad ending in this movie could have really fucked it up all the way. But now, I can't recommend it, but it is not as bad as they say it is. As I said, woeful expectations on this one. I give Fantasy Island 27 points. If it would have had a modern shitty horror movie ending, I probably would have given it the obligatory 17 points because of the 10-point reduction. But now, while it is a flawed movie, it is still not a waste of time, and it was not atrociously bad. It was just a bit underwhelming considering what they could have done. By the way, what is your ultimate fantasy if you would have gone to Fantasy Island? Mine would have involved Rhea Ripley, whips and handcuffs. I'll see you next time for Well So and So reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.